But Brandon, let's move on into our final topic. And for you guys listening and watching, Brandon and I actually forgot about something that I really wanted to talk about here on the Primetime Podcast. So we're doing it. We're calling it audible. We're actually calling a timeout. We're making a change to the play. We're not going to talk about our Coach K segment. What we are going to do is we're going to talk about what the Big East has proposed and has recommended, I should say, that the NCAA does. So right now, with the NBA draft, we have the one-and-done rule. We have news that Adam Silver and the NBA want to abolish the one-and-done rule, basically making it to where you want to try to come to the NBA out of high school? Go ahead. You can do that. Oh, you want to play overseas? Go ahead. You can do that. You want to try to play in the G League? Go ahead. You can do that. And we've talked about this on both the Fast Break Primetime Podcast, but the Big East has recommended that just on the NCAA side, so I'm reading the ESPN article right here. So the Big East plan calls for an elimination of the one-and-done system, which would have to be done by the NBA, which is the result of the NBA rule that prohibits its teams from drafting players until they're at least 19 or a year removed from high school. 2 or none would be an NCAA policy requiring basketball players who decide to go to college to commit for at least 2 seasons. Meanwhile, high school players who declare for the NBA draft would forfeit future college eligibility. So, Brandon, the Big East recommending a 2-1 for the college, just an NCAA policy. What do you think of this? If we get rid of the one and done and basically have a policy on the college side of, you want to come to college, that's great, but you got to give us 2 years.
I love it. I absolutely love it. That's basically what I had proposed on one of these podcasts, just saying 3 years instead of 2.
Yeah.
The Big East is basically proposing the same type of thing, just using 2 years. I think that's great because I think that they should be able to just go if they want to go right from high school to the NBA, go ahead, do it. And you shouldn't then have to, go into college for that, for the 1 year and then have the one and done. I mean, I think it helps the player. If they go into college, they're going to be there for 2 years at least. And it helps the coach, I think, too, to be able to, I don't know if it necessarily is going to help on recruiting, but it's going to help the type of team that you're going to be building.
Yeah.
And knowing that, okay, if you get a Marvin Bagley type player, if you get a Mo Bamba type player, a
Miles Bridges type player.
You don't just have them for 1 year. You've got at least 2 years with them, which is hopefully then for that program, you have at least 2 opportunities to get to the tournament, go deep in the tournament, make a run, and possibly win a national championship.
You know what? There would only be one team right now, maybe 1 or 2 teams, really only one team, that this would be a cultural shock for, and that would be Kentucky. I don't know if Coach Cal would know what to do. Coach Cal has always said in interviews where it's like, I'd love to have these guys for 2 years, but I don't. I would really want to see that put to the test. All right, Coach, you got these guys for 2 years. The guys you're bringing in, you got them for 2 years, not just 1, because they're the main, Duke has some one-and-done guys, and this year, Wendell Carter, Bagley, Grayson Allen was not a one-and-done guy. He was one of the only ones, but Kentucky each and every year is just pumping out one-and-dones. There would be the only team that would be really shook by this, but I
don't think they'd be shook, though. I think that
they would adapt to it, obviously.
They'd be better for longer.
Yeah. They would.
That's the only thing. That's the only thing that would happen. Kentucky would be better for longer.
The thing I love about this, though, is from a fan perspective. It has nothing to do with the draft perspective. From a fan perspective, because how many times during the year, just a college basketball year, you're learning guys at the beginning, you don't really get comfortable with them. They're not really household names until you get to the end of conference play. You get to March Madness. And then by the time they're a household name and everyone knows who they are, bye, you're going to the NBA, and I'm never going to see you again.
Yeah.
I mean, I will. I like the NBA in college, but like for someone like yourself where you're just college, it's Brandon, bye, I'm never going to see you again.
Who cares?
Exactly. Whereas this, you at least get to grow with them in a 2-year time. Plus, the thing I like this for a college basketball side, which has nothing to do with the draft here, is look at the teams this year in March Madness. Look at the teams in March Madness the past 2 years. Loyola, who we talked about earlier, not a one-and-done team. I mean, yeah, Villanova has Mikal Bridges, but Jalen Brunson, not a one-and-done guy. You look at Michigan, not a one-and-done team. Mo Wagner's been there for about 2 or 3 years now. These are teams that, when you have more consistency, look at Gonzaga. How many times do they have one-and-dones? I mean, these are programs like the teams with more experience win games late. And yeah, when you have talent, some of those talented teams like Duke, they got to the Elite Eight this year. It wasn't like, oh, they got mostly one-and-done, so they're automatically out of it. But because you're going to have these guys for at least 2 years, that's going to make your teams better, and it's going to make the basketball better that we're watching come to the conference tournament plays, coming to the NCAA tournament when everybody is really watching college basketball.
Yeah, I also think it would make the players better. Mm-hmm. I think it would make the players better because in that year, after that year one, I don't think they all have it figured out.
Yeah.
I don't think that's why. I mean, how many times have we talked about when we've done our NBA big boards and stuff like that, talked about, yeah, we're kind of just going on this guy's potential because he did, really well, but he's still really raw. He's still a really raw talent. Mm-hmm. They're not as raw of a talent if they're going into year 2 and they're in college. And they're able to even work out some of their own kinks. I'll always go back to Buddy Hield. And how he
changed his shot.
He completely changed his shot. Mm-hmm. And look at what's happened with Markelle Fultz. We're hearing now tonight as we're recording that he's making his return. But he's out 68 games.
Yeah, 62, 60-some games.
Because he had no confidence in his shot, and he was
injured.
He was,
air quotes, injured.
Sure. But that could have all been solved by extra years in college. Well, I firmly believe that. So I think it's better for the player themselves.
We're thinking alike. And me on a little bit of a different path, but almost the same path, to where the 76ers, Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, I put them in a different category because TPP, trust in the process. But you look at just this year, Lonzo Ball. I mean, yeah, coming out, playing at a good level in the NBA, but inconsistent. Not going to carry the Lakers to a championship this year. Jason Tatum, playing on a really good team. He's played well this year. Probably a shock of the draft. Probably in redrafts would be number 1 overall. But really, who's been playing better than him? Jaylen Brown, who's a guy who came out 2016, would have been another year of basketball before coming out. Josh Jackson, De'Aaron Fox, all these guys. Jonathan Isaac. I know Isaac, I think, has been dealing with injuries this year. Markkanen, just watching him in Chicago, he's had flashes of like, oh, he's really good, can play at the pro level, but yet again, inconsistent as well. And his has to do with the team as well. Whereas you see other guys where it's like, even guys like Zach Collins was a one and done. He's starting to feel it now towards the end of his first year. And the thing that I think of is, for the draft purpose, do players need to go to college? No. Let's not kid ourselves. They don't need to go to college. But another thing that I think this rule helps with, and it's not something that people think about, because, like, look at LeBron James. LeBron James never had to go to college because greatest player ever to play the game, except for Michael Jordan. Still going to throw that one out there. But because of how much money he's made over his career and how he's invested it, he's never needed a plan B. However, there are some players that might need a plan B if their careers don't pan out or they get injured after a certain number of years. And on the schooling side, what this could at least do is if you're forcing someone like, oh, you're coming to college, you're going to stay for 2 years, at the least on the academic side, they could get an associate's to where after you get out, let's say you do have an injury in the NBA and you have to call your pro career quits. If you do want to complete coursework, you only have to deal with 2 years. You don't have to be like, well, I'm not going to do that because I got to get a whole bachelor's and I only stayed for 1 year in college to play college basketball before going pro. So there's that side to it as well. Although I know most people, hey, if they're going to the NBA, they're not thinking about that. But if we get rid of the one and done, the players who are not going to think about that will go pro, and the ones who are kind of in the middle will go to college, stay for 2 years, and at least they'll be able to get that associate's in the 2 years, hopefully, while playing college basketball.
Yeah, I think you could do that. I think that's definitely a positive for them. I also think it's a positive for the NBA. I think you're going to be getting a better quality player. You're going to be getting a better quality player, a more ready player, and you're going to be knowing a little bit more about the player when you get them than you do now.
Scouts will have more tape.
They'll have more tape, and yes, would people say, well, that's going to hurt him because, like the Miles Bridges, if he would have gone last year, he would have been, he would have been great. He would have gotten this big contract. But look at him this year, he's fallen so far. Oh, Michael Porter Jr., he's got to go now because he's going to get that money. And, if he wait, blah, 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 all this stuff. But it's like, okay, yeah, but they're going to be better. They're going to be able to, I think, work out more kinks, especially if you're injured in year one, like a Michael Porter Jr. There's not that pressure on you of, not to say that there is necessarily,
I have to go pro.
But I got to go now. I have got to go now. And he officially today, before we recorded, he did announce that he was going to be headed to the NBA draft and declaring. But there's not that pressure on you then. There's not that, oh, I've got to go. I can have another season. I just think that overall it would make things a lot easier. It would take some pressures off of the coaches. It would take some pressures off of the players. And I think it would certainly help I think it would help the very lackluster NBA league that we have right now to be able to receive a better quality, more ready NBA caliber player.
And the thing that, the perfect example to this is Miles Bridges, to where some would say last year, and I was trying to look up old mock drafts, can't find them. Like old mock drafts, once they're done, it's like, take those down. We don't want to be wrong. But a lot of people had him high. Comes back this year. I don't think he's as high as he was last year, or he's around maybe the same spot. Maybe he is a little higher, but I think what this does is this rule, or this recommended rule for the Big East, would not really change the draft. It would not change the NBA draft because, let's be honest, the guys like DeAndre Ayton, the guys like Marvin Bagley, the guys like Luka Doncic, I know he's overseas, the guys like Michael Porter. Like, if Michael Porter Jr. could have came right out of high school, I'm sorry, Mizzou, you wouldn't have even had a chance to touch him, because he wouldn't have even committed to Washington at first. He would have just went straight to the NBA. So you're still going to have those players go to the NBA. It's that middle tier of players, the Grayson Allen type players, the late first, maybe like just out of the lottery, maybe the low lottery players. Those will be the ones that go to college. Maybe even all the lottery ones would go pro. And it would be just the bottom end, maybe 20 to 30 would be the kind of players that right now would be going to college. But really the tape as well. And I know a lot of people, it's either one side or the other, where it's like, yes, I would love to see 2 years on this guy before I fall in love with him. Where there's other guys that are going, no, I only need to see 1 year. I only need to see 1 year because then we can bring him in. We can work on him and basically change all his habits before he has any bad habits to change. Where on me, I'm the other side, where give me more film to watch of a guy so that I can find exactly, because human nature is we fall in love with something right away. We fall in love with it. And then after a while, it's like, all right, I'm starting to notice some things that I don't really like about this. Maybe I don't like burgers as much as I thought I did after eating them every day for 32 days.
We know that's not true.
It's not for me. I love burgers. I could eat it every day. But for the college side, we're going to get a better product because we're going to get more experienced players, and we're still going to have, like, the low-level schools will still have the players that stay for junior, senior year, but we're going to have more experienced players that are at least sophomores and not freshmen playing in games and starting in games down the line for college basketball.
I mean, I just think this whole one-and-done rule, I think it's so
ridiculous,
inconceivably ridiculous. Why it's happening? Why there's that force of, you know, you got to do this, or you know, just one year. Blah, why? You know, who is that helping? Who is that helping? Nobody. And I, you know, like I said, I had mentioned on a couple of podcasts ago, 3 years in college, 2 years I'd be fine with as well. It gives them, the player, a little bit more experience. It gives the player a little bit more time. It takes that pressure off. There's more film from the NBA scouts. There's more to be able to notice. There's more that they can work and improve on before they get to the NBA, instead of trying to work on it when they get to the NBA, if that's the case. Now, not every single player has to work on doing something different. You always want to grow and get to and be a better player once you get to the NBA. Like Trae Young, he doesn't want to miss 10 threes a game.
Maybe
when he
he'll
gets
have
to
some
the NBA.
competent teammates he could pass it to, and they won't turn the ball over.
Be outstanding.
Yeah,
but I just think
I'll just take 30-something foot threes because I don't like turnovers either, Trey.
I just think that it makes so much more sense. It is so much more sensical to do it the way that the Big East is proposing. I think the NCAA would be silly and foolish for not looking into this and for implementing it. I really think they would be foolish.
Well, and just the end of the article has a few bullet points where it says, the Big East called for the NCAA to change rules to allow basketball players similar access to agents and advisors that is permitted for hockey and baseball players. The proposed Elite Player Unit, or EPU, would concentrate on several areas. Number one, pre-collegiate guidance for players in grades 8 through 12, managing recruiting events, agent regulation that would create more straight certification or stringent certification than the NBA and its players union currently have in place. The EPU would serve as a liaison to the NCAA's academic and membership affairs division with respect to NCAA legislation on men's basketball recruiting, oversight of the relationship between the NCAA, coaches, schools, and appeals company. Apparels company. I had it right. And then ethics and strengthening the code of conduct for coaches in recruiting high school players and potential college transfers. So they're also thinking that side of it as well. And the thing that I was going to say that I completely lost, my last point, that usually what happens. I go on to something else, I completely lose what I was going to say, but the thing that I'll end with this is I think this could be a positive. Oh, I got it. The reason why I'm okay with 2 years instead of 3 years is 3 years in football you need, I believe, because that's a sport where I am coming at you and I am tackling you. If you stay 1 year in college, then come out, I am sorry. If you are a quarterback and you are getting hit by, give me a pass rusher, somebody in the NFL, a Miles Garrett, an Aaron Donald. You got Aaron Donald coming at your face and you're a 20-year-old kid. I'm sorry, you're getting your head ripped off. Concussion, you're gone. We only got to see you for one game. That's why for like a football, you need 3 years. Your body needs to grow into football. With basketball, kids can, depending on where you're at, kids can come out of high school and compete in the NBA. There is that tier of players. LeBron James, like, how ridiculous would it have been great for us. We would have been able to talk about it, but think about how ridiculous it would have been if LeBron had to go to college for 1 year, which would have been North Carolina. I believe he's been on record saying he probably would have went to North Carolina. Think of how ridiculous that would have been. It would have been like, come on, we know this guy's an NBA player. You're forcing him to play in college. So for me, I love this. If you want to go to the NBA, you feel like you can go to the NBA, go right ahead. However, if you don't want to, you can come to college. But when you're signing that letter of intent, you're giving us 2 years. It kind of strengthens college basketball too and doesn't make it just a gateway to the NBA for players who can't just come right out of high school. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the podcast?
No, I think that I really hope that the NCAA takes this seriously, looks at this intently,
I would love it,
and ends up coming up and saying yes. And I really also hope that the NBA jumps on board. Adam Silver says, yes, we also need to look at this. And what was, again,
I just hope Adam Silver says we're done with the one and done.
But again, what was good and what seemed to work 12 years ago, 13 years ago, is not necessarily still relevant today.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly it. And this is where I want you guys to come in. Let us know what you guys think down below of this 2 and done rule proposed by the Big East Conference for college basketball. Do you think it's dumb? Do you think it's smart? Do you like it? You love it? You want some more of it? Or do you just hate it all in general and think that players should just be able to go as they may and shouldn't have to stay for any years if they go to college basketball? But I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. A little housekeeping here at the end. If you want to help support us, make sure we can do what we do. Make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. Go ahead and give the Primetime Podcast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, on iTunes, if you have an account or you're listening to us on those platforms. Make sure to check out mostvaluablepodcast.com. That's where we put everything each and every day. And last but not least, if you want an MVP t-shirt, that link is down below in the description. Want to thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.